Where a residential property is let on a short-term lease, such as an assured short-hold tenancy agreement in the case of England, or an occupation contract in the case of Wales, the landlord has a right to access the property. The landlord has an implied right by law to access the property if the landlord wishes to inspect the condition of the property, if the landlord needs to carry out routine maintenance, or even repairs. The term implied right means that the law states the landlord has that right, even if the contract between the parties does not state that such right exists. Some contracts will, however, mention the right of access that the landlord has, and may even mention the reasons that the landlord may require access to the property. And these are known as contractual rights. These are additional rights to access the property to those already implied by law. In contrast, a tenant has an implied obligation to allow access to the let premises, where the tenant is given at least 24 hours written notice. The tenant also has a right to quiet enjoyment of the property. This is implied by law, so again it does not matter if the contract in place does not mention this right, and this right effectively means the tenant has the right to reside in the property without interference of the landlord. That does mean the landlord cannot enter the property without the tenant's permission. But if a tenant does deny access to the property, the tenant is in breach of their obligation implied by law to allow access to the property, and it may be that they're also in breach of their contractual obligation if the contract in place states that the tenant must allow access to the property for a specific purpose that may be mentioned in the contract. We have covered in separate videos what action a landlord could take in the event their tenant is denying access to the property. If you have any queries relating to this subject and you need legal advice on a tenant denying access to your let property, do contact our legal team and we'll be able to advise you on the next steps.